Thanks for joining us yet again for another edition of our Midwest Studies Group video series. This week's topic, diversifying your revenue stream. Joining us is Executive Director for Friends of the Family, Ben Brustkern. Thanks for being with us, Ben.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm a Jersey guy. How you doing? So, perfect.
Yeah, Iowa guy here. I don't know where I picked it up. A lot of Sopranos watching.
Hey, before we get started, though, maybe you could share with everybody what exactly Friends of the Family does.
Yeah, so Friends of the Family. I'll kind of start. Our mission is to ensure housing and safe shelter for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and also housing for people experiencing homelessness. Our vision here is everyone has a home. And, really what we're doing is just how can we quickly create housing solutions for people, whether they come into our shelter or whether they're homeless on the street in another shelter. It's really about how quickly can we move someone from homelessness into housing.
An awesome mission, and you guys have been around for how many years?
This is our 30th year.
Okay, which is amazing because, for years, Friends of the Family has been very successful, but also very heavy in the government grant-driven kind of world. Now you've increased your focus on annual giving, event revenue. Did you wake up one morning and say, hey, we should start, changing how we do things? Or was it as simple as that? Or what kind of went through your mind?
Yeah, we really just snapped our fingers and boom, it was there.
Yeah.
Actually, I would go back. So I moved into the director role in 2011 after being here for 10 years previous to that. And there was some transitioning happening across the state as it related to domestic violence services. And through that transition, working with other programs, what I realized was that Friends of the Family was so far behind everybody else from a development standpoint. We did not have a dedicated development officer on board. We were doing an event, but we were selling 100 tickets. I don't know that the return was always worth what was there. And it really dawned on me that one of our biggest goals need to be how are we going to work to create a much stronger development department that will allow us to bring in more donations so that we can continue to bring in other projects and start new projects and have more impact in our community.
So I know, hiring people is one step into getting in the right direction, but
Yep.
what other ideas and thoughts and things that you actually experienced helped you grow that individual donor base and the number of people that came to your events?
Yeah, I think part of it was also how I changed the director role, making sure that getting out and building connections with people, people in the community, getting to know them, making sure that we're showing up at all of the networking events that are within that community, taking time to schedule one-to-one meetings with people, business leaders, people that had been our donor base. How do we grow people that were giving maybe $100 to Friends of the Family to $500? So we were really looking at all of these different angles of like, how are we going to have impact on our services from a donation standpoint, a development standpoint? And it really was like just baseline, get in and start meeting and talking to people.
But when you're heavily funded in the government grant world and you're doing well, so it's not like you weren't successful, but you're really, again, heavily into that government grant world. It's easy to be kind of maybe focused on your own program. You had to kind of say, okay, I can't just worry about programs, but you now have to meet with donors, right? And be part of these committees of visiting with people, thinking about planned giving. How has that changed your work schedule, do you think, and your focus in that transition of executive director?
Yeah, I think it's much more time for me, not inside of the actual day-to-day of running those grants and programs, and more working on the business or on business development relationships that are going to lead us to a better donation base, stronger supporters, so on and so forth. Because even when you are government based, right, the government doesn't just cut you a check for 1.4 million. Here you go. Now go spend it.
It's not that easy.
No, right?
Oh, wow. Too
You
bad.
gotta actually, like, you gotta have money in the bank to support your service up front because they're going to reimburse you for that. Um, and so if we wanted to even expand programming, we had to start to build our donor base, which meant we had to start building those connections through our board of directors, through the networking events, through community members that were be pointing in our direction. And that meant that I had to change kind of the work that I did, which had always been programming, 10 years prior, being in mid-management running programming, to a little bit bigger scale of time with people.
So about 5, 10 years ago, and again, this kind of fits of when
Yeah.
you took over leadership. A lot of people in the community didn't even know who Friends of the Family was, and some of this has to do, currently with more and more people knowing about you, has to do with your marketing and how you really made a big focus on improving your marketing. So my question to you is this: how have you done things differently marketing wise, and how has this made a difference as you interact with people in the community now?
Yeah. So, from a market, we've taken a little bit different perspective. We were very heavily invested in the social media side. And one of the things we try to do is be kind of non-traditional in how we approach that. And that means we're creating a lot of video, much like you're doing today, but not just sit down, videos like in this capacity, but fun things that will kind of draw people in. Video series that may make no sense to most people as to why a nonprofit is doing it. For instance, last year, our event is a night in Las Vegas, and we decided to reshoot scenes from The Hangover to help promote that event. And then what we were getting is like people were like, hey, I just saw your video. That was some of the, it was really funny, or it was great to see it, or boy, your acting skills are absolutely the worst I've ever seen in my life. But it was engaging people, right? We were getting people coming in and they were liking and they were seeing and they were commenting. And that was one way that we could really try to be non-traditional in the way that we were marketing. And it's allowed us to continue to grow our social media over the course of the year quite a bit, actually. And we've got goals that we're looking at internally. And it's not just social media. We do advertising through some of our local media companies. We do some Google advertising, a lot of different methods to try to break that, that initial contact for people, and then being able to go in and have further conversations.
And I don't know if it's still on YouTube or anything, but if people want to see these excellent acting skills of yours, is that still available for people to see?
Yeah, I think you can find it at Facebook under Friends of the Family. There's a series of 6, and I am by far the worst actor of the crew.
So autograph sessions at the end of the year is going to be a fundraiser, and then we'll release that later. So
Yeah, send me a 8x10 and I'll sign it and send it back to you.
there you go. So, well, you've worked with Midwest Studies Group in the past,
Yep.
and one of the things that we really coached and pushed is the idea that when you have individual giving programs you want to grow, you need to strategically think about who's going to be on that list, and then you just need to get out there and do it. And that's where people get a little nervous. Like, you just got to get out and do it. And so I know it's a lot harder than it sounds, but it has to be done. What's one tip that you would suggest to others when trying to meet with donors for the first time?
Um, be real. Don't push for that donation. Understand it's going to take time to get there. So just start to build that personal rapport. Just like, if you're working with clients, it's the same thing you ask of your staff. Start by building personal rapport so that you can find that long-term connection there. I think that's the most important piece.
Any other suggestions you would give overall to a nonprofit that's moving away from being grant heavy to looking to get more into individual giving? What would be that top tip you would give?
Yeah, I know working with Midwest Studies Group was a good tip for us, and that helped move us in the direction. So if you're thinking about it, consider MSG for
Oh, thanks, Ben. I didn't even pay Ben to say that. Thank you so much.
no. What you got to do it right. That's probably the biggest thing, and it's so easy to continue to write those grants year in and year out. But if you really want to truly move that impact, get the community to buy in and get behind you, you got to get out there and start knocking on doors and just start conversations with people.
And if you're a nonprofit director right now that's looking to maybe transition from being grant heavy to bringing on more donors, and you need someone to get some advice from, Ben is a great resource. He loves giving advice on how he has done things in the past. He loves helping fellow executive directors. How could someone learn more about Friends of the Family or be in contact with you if they have more questions?
Yeah, so you can find us on the web at fofia.org. Again, that's fofia.org, or Google Friends of the Family Iowa will pop up. Also, you'll find us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and myself. You'll find I have a LinkedIn account under Ben Brustkern. And you can also email me at ben@fofia.org.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks, Chuck.
And everyone else, thanks for joining. Chuck Rowe, Midwest Studies Group. Catch you next time.